Hi, welcome everybody to Commissioner Wilson's virtual office hours.
Happy Friday. Sorry we're late. Of course it's Friday, so we're trying to get in the last little bit of all the stuff we need to get done. And thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
I was late because putting on lipstick is like something I don't even remember. It took me a second to be like,
beautiful.
I'm actually showing my lips now. It's great.
It's really crazy, isn't it?
know.
Like, I wonder what the sales are going to show with lipstick and tooth whitener and all the things that we've. I saw that dress pants now are kind of harder to come by, and some work shoes because
people are tired of wearing their pajamas.
Yeah, that's it. We're having to completely dress ourselves now.
Yeah. Well, we had a really crazy week. Lots going on, but all very good. Obviously, the mayor went ahead and just released all mandates for COVID because we went
into that phase 3 or stage 3 or however, it was really tiered based on the percentage of residents that have been vaccinated and the positivity rate. And we're still under 4% positivity rate. I think we're right at 3.2, and we're still hovering at that 60% 12 and up. It looks like we haven't made a move, but remember that age went down. So I think if we were looking at the percentage of vaccinated, 20 up, 30 up, 40 up, we'd be getting into much bigger numbers. Clearly, if you're 13 years old, you're dependent on your family, your parents, your guardian to get you there. So, sort of the plea right now is that if you are a parent or guardian, please go ahead and get that teenager vaccinated. The school year next year could be totally different if we get that done. I think that there's going to be ongoing opportunities, CVS, Walmart, Publix. I know the county still has Barnett Park. I think there's, going to be hopefully going into the next sort of phase of this. We're going to see more and more of those opportunities actually at medical providers. It's been difficult with the ones that have to be refrigerated to go into the doctor's offices that are sort of satellite offices. But I think that, if you know anybody that needs a ride, give them a ride. If you know anybody that doesn't know how to get access, please give us a call. We will walk you through it. There's just too many opportunities to get vaccinated, and we don't want a drop of it to go to waste. There are people all over the world waiting for their opportunity to be vaccinated.
I know. I'm actually hearing some things I never thought I would hear, that some states are reaching 80% vaccinated or 70%.
Yes.
And I'm like, I think New York just hit like almost 80%.
Well, they saw the worst of the first surge. So you're talking about a population that so many people were lost. So I think they look at it, as an opportunity to make sure that never happens to them again, at least with this virus. I think that the thing that I want to make sure, there's a lot of myths out there and misinformation. And one of the ones that really drives me crazy is that this wasn't fully vetted. This wasn't that the experiments that usually qualify a drug to be approved weren't done. They were done. We've now given this vaccine to more people than any trial has ever had.
Yeah.
So when you look at the evidence continues to be overwhelming about the safety and efficacy of this, because you're talking about when you get to a state like New York where 80% are vaccinated and how many people that is. This has been probably the best tested vaccine on the market, because if you think about what other vaccines, what it looks like when they come out in the population, usually they're very focused on. This one was for everybody 12 and up. So you're looking at the population numbers, and the technology that went into it actually was something that was being developed for a very long time. The coronavirus in its state itself that we're dealing with is new. That was the novel part, not the medicine, not the research that went into that vaccine. So just an important piece of information.
It was expedited because it was global, and a lot of funding went into supporting the facilitation of the research.
Look, we can't disagree that now that we work here, we know bureaucracy is a thing. And so from what I've read with the studies that have come out, really what looks like was the fastest part was the part that usually gets bogged down in the bureaucracy. So don't think that was the actual trials themselves. It's, that's not the case.
Science is cool.
Science wins.
Before we go forward, just so that for any new viewers, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you don't, and maybe you're just waiting to ask them in private or something, feel free to email district1@ocfl.net.
And I love this open office hours. Everything's on the table. So really, if we don't know the answer, that's okay. That gives us a chance to go look for it and to, maybe make a new friendship or try to dig in and get some more information out there. So there's nothing that's going to offend us. Just come with the questions.
Yeah. Last week, a lot of the questions were focused around the Horizon West Library. So you actually went to the Board of Trustees meeting.
Did go to the Board of Trustees meeting, and I know there was some frustration with the way that the meeting was formatted. I want to be clear, the Orange County Library System is its own entity. It has a board that makes decisions, a separate CFO, a separate budget. We do work closely with them because, of course, where there's a population growing is where you are recommending a new branch, or if there's a special population or event. So we do work closely with them, and we provide funding for things, and we oftentimes collaborate for growth. But they have their own board. Their board, of course, voted to add a Horizon West branch. It was very needed. It's still very needed, and it looks like from every indication I'm getting that it's moved forward. I know the study on the piece of property that's out there has been underway, and we're going to be getting a full update, I guess, at the next branch meeting. July 8th. July 8th. I think they all start at 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah, 6 to 7. Well, 8:30 sometimes they run a little long.
Yeah, they run long. I know that the frustration, at least from some of the people I know out in Horizon West that wanted to speak at this one, was that it was by Zoom. One of the things on the agenda was whether or not they would continue to have Zoom meetings. And if you spoke asking them to continue doing the virtual meetings, you lost your opportunity to speak later. Just want you to know we are taking all the information in and making sure it's getting to the people that are making decisions. We have tried to be really loud and clear conduits of information and advocates to make sure that branch happens the way it was promised. We are going to continue to keep up that dialogue in every way we can. So I want to make sure that you all know that behind the scenes or in front of the scenes or wherever, that I have been making calls, we email, we continue to make sure that there's not pieces or parts left out that can be used as an excuse later to say, oops, sorry, it's not moving forward. So it's really still top of our list.
Yeah. You also had a really fun friend visit you to do an interview this week.
Oh, if he's watching right now, this is the person that really, I think during the campaign season showed me how, this is the easiest way to really speak to residents. Philip Cameron, Horizon West and Beyond, Facebook page, and he's really a community coordinator, and he likes to go out and talk to people in different businesses and leaders, community leaders, sometimes people at the schools. So Philip, if you're watching, thank you so much for doing what you do. It's such an important reminder that, the accessibility of really residents is changed. It has changed, and I really think it's a great platform that you have, and we're going to continue to try to use every opportunity, and especially the ones that don't cost anybody anything, that aren't prohibited somewhere with a certain number of people having to buy tickets. And I really, really do appreciate him coming out to talk to us.
I wish everybody was that engaged and that connected. It's so important for people to feel like this is an easy process to engage.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, and I know Philip has taken criticism for it, but the platform he provides, or the page, it's really open for discussion. And there are sometimes it gets a little spicy. Sometimes it gets a little heated.
It always will.
But he feels really strongly that there needs to be a place that people can come and talk about stuff. And it's okay. We can agree to disagree. That is a long-standing American tradition.
Yes.
That we can have different ideas and still be good neighbors and good friends. Mm-hmm. And that's how we solve problems.
Yeah. Well, a little spice this week. You had the Vision 2050 workshop with some of the other commissioners and the mayor to talk about the comprehensive plan.
Yes. If you've tuned into any of the planning updates that have been discussed in Orange County for the comprehensive plan, which is sort of our roadmap, or blueprint, if you will, or Orange Code, which is the code which kind of keeps us in bounds and tells us how we do things, they're updating those right now. It's a great time to be in this position, for you to be a resident, because we're incorporating residents' ideas and thoughts, and there's engagement with the community. So those have been going on. There's been a series. If you go to ocfl.net Vision 2050, you can go back and watch any of those from the series. But this week is when they came back to, I should say, the Board of County Commissioners, which we don't get to really sit around together and discuss issues very often. We get to do it at the Board of County Commissioners meeting. We get to do it periodically if someone schedules a sunshine meeting about a particular issue, or during these workshops. And so this was a very exciting thing to be able to have some time as a board and open in the sunshine, recorded for all. We get to dig in. And this one was the one that they talked about, really what we're going to be doing in our natural world. What are we doing environmentally? What are we doing about our air and water? So of course it had my antenna was up, and I was prepared to have the conversations that need to be had. Probably should have been had before the last comprehensive plan and code update, but now, being as clear and articulate about what the voters and residents want was really important to me.
And I think pedestrian safety and transportation
huge
are always some of those leading factors in the planning process.
Huge.
But this time around, you got to talk a little bit more about like sustainability and some of
those all go together, right?
They all go together.
And I think about how strangely siloed things can be here at the county, but we talked about, we talk about it like every chance we get, because it seems like all roads lead back to roads. Sorry, I had to throw a pun in.
It really does.
It really does.
Is. I mean, even social justice issues can be tied to city planning.
Absolutely,
like
absolutely.
Segregation.
Absolutely.
And quality of life, depression.
Yes. Where are you putting the
poverty lines?
Exactly. So, the idea of making sure that when we talk about sustainability and putting language in the next comprehensive plan and putting language in our code, and it not just being the word sustainability. I think you can smack a leaf on a piece of paper and then
that's sustainable.
And then print 700,000 of those pieces of paper, and it's not authentic. So what I really feel strongly about, and every chance I get, I try to call out, is if our goals, which have been now clearly we are laid out our goals, right? That we have a sustainability chief who does an amazing job looking for opportunities for us to be on the front end of making some really great planning decisions going forward in offsetting our carbon footprint. We can't just talk about it, can't just go on paper. It's got to be part of that code, because that's how we hold everyone to it. And so that was a lot of the discussion. It was great to see the rest of I think the whole commission was very involved in this, and you really get a sense of consensus about wanting it to go that way. It's about how do we get there, and so that's where we are now. And getting there includes making sure that when we have something printed in a code, that it's enforceable, that it doesn't allow for loopholes, that it somehow is authentic and applied to what it needs to be applied to. I think about our horrible existing tree ordinance. On its face, the tree ordinance really looks good, but we allow mass grading, and mass grading is the cause of the loss of ecosystems and erosion of the landscape. So topography is changed, and we hear from residents all the time about their concerns, and yet we didn't have that provided for in our last code, or at the very least, we did, there was a big workaround. So they've heard us on that, and we were really making sure to close that up for the next one.
Well, there's such a difference when you go into Winter Garden, for example, right? We went there for the mayor and manager's luncheon, and you can see just a complete, compared to my street, where I do have the 5 or 6 lanes that every quarter mile you finally have a crosswalk, and you have to go in the just straight sun in order to get anywhere.
Yeah, we had our city managers and mayors meeting. We do a meeting to make sure that we're all in communication. Obviously, transportation issues are comprehensively across the county, so having that conversation with our municipalities is really important. And I really appreciate the time that I get. And Winter Garden, the manager of the city of Winter Garden spent a great deal of time with us to let us know what were in the plans for Winter Garden, and where they sort of their philosophy of transportation and how it fits in with what is coming in the county, because we really need to be cohesive. There needs to be a singular, and I believe, a vision, because I think for starters, you see the quality of life there in Winter Garden where they've applied that vision, and it is good. You know, people there are very happy with some of the planning decisions that have been made, which to me is evidence for us to be able to go back and say, look, this does work. When we are in a residential area, there's no reason to add more lanes and up the speed limit. That's you're asking for, some really dangerous conditions, and that goes to all of the planning in areas like that. So, you know, if you're thinking about the way that you're landscaping and that, you know, the way that you're bringing people into and out of intersections and where you're placing your schools and your certification and training programs, and so it's all a very global view, and I think we're going to continue to have a good working relationship with Winter Garden. I know Oakland's got big plans. It's so great to talk to the people in Oakland, and Steve has a really a good vision also for how to kind of move forward with, I think, some of the things that are going to be happening transportation wise from the DOT, because they go right up to the turnpike. So there's some big projects coming their way. That's not us, but we have a great relationship with Steve. So if there's a question about some of the things that you're seeing out there, reach out and we will get you to the right place.
Yeah, we were able to see some of the first few blueprints of Tucker Ranch, which I thought was very beautiful, and some other transportation ideas that they brought up, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's that's partly funded by the Amendment 1, the Trust for Public Land. So there's going to be, they acquired a piece of land that is going to be a beautiful community park right there, and it's going to have sort of an eco center for kayak and paddleboard, and it's in an area that really needs it. It's going to be a great place for it right there on North Avalon, near Tildenville, near Sunridge. So I am so excited about what's coming, and I'm hoping that there's going to be great opportunities there for community engagement and involvement. And I'm just grateful for that vision, and actually trying to incorporate as many different ideas for health and fitness, and then also sort of the private-public partnership that works so well in settings like that. You know, he's got health providers that are like, hey, we've got this idea. You can use this here, and you'll see that people will get this health benefit from that. And so those are things that city managers don't necessarily come into in every project looking at. But when you're willing to ask the questions about what would work here and what do people need to be healthier in my community, you get great outcomes.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating, and also some of the other things that we got to see were just small little, techniques that you can incorporate in your city designing. One was the crosswalk on an angle. So I thought that was so simple,
and it makes so much sense. So you can it's hard to describe this without seeing the
kind of like this.
Yes.
So if there's a road like
seeing
this,
the rendering. But the idea is that when you step out, you're looking at the way that you are more likely than not missing something coming at you.
Yeah.
And you think about pedestrian safety and trying to come at it in different ways, and a lot of the ways that we have to keep pedestrians safe are considered really, really expensive, even though I think it's a good investment no matter what.
Yeah.
This isn't one of those. This is literally a very simple design fix that makes so much sense when you look at the way people go to cross the road and where they're looking.
Yeah, same thing as
the roundabout.
I almost said rotary.
Yes.
Roundabout.
Well, I think the roundabout is so interesting because you hear how expensive it is, and it, in order to be able to get the right of way, and usually you take up a little more land, and it doesn't work for intersections in your major thoroughfares, right? We're never going to see one at 50 and Cimarron. We're never going to see one, and I understand that. But in residential area, it's really nice because it does slow it down.
And that's one of our largest
opportunity
complaints.
For some really great landscaping and adding some character to an area that wouldn't have had it if you just added more painted lanes.
Yeah, and people can't street race and drag race
on through a roundabout.
It's really, really hard.
That would stop that. Yeah, exactly.
You also received a briefing on the American Rescue Plan.
Yes,
which I thought was awesome.
American Rescue Plan, as many of you all know, is going to be it's federal. There are plans from the administration federally to make sure that communities are getting basically allocations for specific uses of funds that will be put into social services, infrastructure. A lot of times it's replacing budget that was really pretty decimated during the pandemic for expenses that were anticipated.
Yeah.
So my budget hawks out there will know this. Really, when you look at a budget, you do the best you can at the beginning of a budget year to anticipate your costs, you anticipate your revenues, and clearly, the pandemic sort of did a number on that. We've been very fortunate here that our home values have been really stable and steady, in fact, going up. And so we've, our local tax base for that revenue has been steady, but our tax base on, sales tax has not been steady. There's been some fluctuation there. There's been obviously a very big dip in the tourist tax revenue. So what the federal government is doing is allocating funds to make that up on the other end. And so we're going to be able to earmark very specifically for projects that were either put on hold or were no longer viable at the time because of the pandemic, and possibly new projects that are needed. We've seen that broadband and good internet service is a utility. It's not a luxury item. It's a utility. Yeah. It is as important as power. We had children, learning by sitting on curbs outside of Starbucks. Yeah. And we had people working, from home, trying to sit in their car to get better cell service. And so what we know is that some of the funding coming from the federal government will go specifically to that infrastructure. Nice. They're looking at specific funding for water and sewer upgrades, because we also understand that across the nation, aging infrastructure for water treatment and sewage treatment is a health and safety issue. Yeah. This isn't radical, it's water. And without water, you don't have life. So it's going to be really good to see the ability to upgrade and update some of that infrastructure. There's going to be transportation, I believe, infrastructure funding. And I think, when I spoke with Philip out in Horizon West, there's a great frustration in the lag time that it takes to get really basic transportation infrastructure, a place that needs a stop sign or a red light, when the housing's there. And I agree. We have been looking really closely at a way to make sure that those things coincide. The development plans that move those houses through really quick have been in the works since 2014, 2015, the actual PD itself since 1998, 96. So we are looking at what was long in the works. And my question is always, well, why didn't we start the road planning then? Why didn't we start the mass transit planning then? Why didn't we figure out how to get some good bus, service back then? But, I can't continue to look backwards for those, especially when it comes to the infrastructure planning. We got to look forwards and make sure there's no money left on the table. Mm-hmm. If there's money coming from the state or the federal government, and a lot of the state funds that were allocated for projects locally recently came from the federal government also. So, I know that they're all patting themselves on the back in Tallahassee for their great job being able to take on some of these projects, but it came from the administration in their effort to make sure that what we suffered with over the last year doesn't continue to impact our economy and our lives for the years to come.
Mm-hmm. Well, certain projects that have been put on hold, I know that we're still trying to get to the bottom of it, but we had a lot of emails this week about the CIP for the animal shelter.
Yes, and I agree. I raised the issue with our people that do all of our budgetary projections. I raised the issue with the county administrators and county administration. So we are going to continue to push for that. I'll actually be asking about it very specifically in terms of what we're getting earmarked for what. And like I said, some other things that are earmarked from the American Rescue Plan are projects that were in the works that the funding was either, transferred to something else or displaced because of the lack of revenue. And I believe that the time is right, overdue to get that facility replaced. It's hot in there. It's, I think the location is really good. I know that the wonderful people at Animal Services feel like that too, because they're really in an area that they can get a population of people to come by and maybe volunteer because it's convenient, or come foster or adopt because it's convenient. So we're not necessarily going to start fresh with a brand new piece of property. And I know that they have an assessment for the cost ratios on those things, starting fresh or redeveloping the piece of property that's already there. Mm-hmm. And so we are not going to let go of that one until it gets done.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's move on to this awesome event that you had today. You went to the Wekiva Septic to Sewer ceremony.
So yeah, I got invited to the Wekiva Septic to Sewer ceremony, Orange County. This was before I got here, but boy, if you don't think it falls in line with the things that I'm like, okay, these are the plans, these are the projects that there's a model now that we are going to try to utilize for areas of concern all over the county. And I hope they use it in other counties as a model for ways to get off of septic. We know that right now the red tide is gobbling up the sea life on the West Coast. We have lakes here that are closed because of algae blooms. We have some very dangerous conditions in our waterway, and we know the things that are feeding that. This is us. This isn't from outer space. This is us. This is because we can't stop dumping fertilizer on our lawns, and we can't get the septics out of our ground fast enough. I'm committed to not allowing more septic in new development. I think that is a clear goal for the update to our code. But on top of that, we need to figure out how to get septic out of existing neighborhoods and communities. It's very expensive. The way that it was done in this particular instance was with a collaboration from state, so DEP, the Water Management District, the county, and then the residents, because the residents cared enough to say, you know what, we get it. We actually moved here because we love the nature. We moved here because we wanted to be able to live somewhere where there was clean water and fresh air. And so they paid in also. It would have been out of their pockets. It would have been something, I think, insurmountable to convince them or to have that dialogue. But because it was a collaborative effort, I think that they felt really good about it. And it was really great to meet them today and understand that the residents we met today, not only did their goals were to get those septics out, but also to convince their neighbors to get those septics out. So we're going to try to use that model and the expertise of our utilities folks. We have some really brilliant utilities minds that really try to navigate their way through these systems and get us a retrofit is what it is. That's not easy.
No, that's not easy. But I will say, just being able to have a little bit of a dialogue with some of the residents.
That's great.
They all really want to move in that direction, and they have different reasons. Some of them brought up the fact that they think this will help their property values
That's
go
right.
up.
Well, the way it's looking, eventually with septics, understanding that, especially in the Wekiva area, which is an area of concern, will likely be required to be replaced. Their concern was, are we going to be able to sell this someday or leave this to our children as their inheritance, knowing that there's going to be a burden on it, that it's not, that the sewage is not up to date, that what it's left with is going to be more expensive than the home, and will it decrease the value of the home. And it was a beautiful, lovely, mature neighborhood with so much value. To see it be ruined by poor septic is, I understand, would be very, very hard for them to move forward. And I thought it was a great point to be made that even if you weren't thinking about selling it, the idea that value in your home that's your asset, right? You use that as a foundation for so much in your life as you're considering how to balance your budget and go through your finances and invest. So it was a good thing to talk to them and see the different motivations.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Commissioner Moore and her team, Kathy and Daniel. I had an opportunity to just sit down and pick their brain on how they got this done. It was so much work.
So much work. They are great, and they had a real ear to the ground about what people were saying in different communities, because they couldn't have done this without that. And then just having to navigate the bureaucracy, they did a great job.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the next BCC. So you have a lot of interesting things coming. I feel like the binder's getting bigger and bigger. Soon you're not going to be able to fit it through the door.
It's weird. So sometimes the bigger binders are the lighter BCCs.
Oh, really?
Yes, because the BCCs that end up being very long in duration are usually about discussion items or work session items, which are sometimes just, 1 or 2 lines because it's a starting place for a potential ordinance. Whereas sometimes you get the really big thick ones and the plans are there, right? This is the finishing. This is the finish line,
touch,
right?
okay.
We've got now these are all the agreements that have been worked through for years. These are the ordinance, language that has been stricken, so it's added 6 more pages, and so sometimes that'll look a little more daunting. This one has a lot of interesting topics, so I do think it's going to be lengthy and it's going to be worthy of tuning in at least. I think it's interesting because a lot of times the more hot topic stuff comes in the morning. It's going to be in the afternoon this time.
Yeah.
We've got the picketing ordinance, which was brought forward as a request from Sheriff Mina, and it's really about a buffer, a residential buffer for protests. There was a lot of concern amongst the board about the chilling of free speech, which I think anytime you talk about limiting picketing or protest, you have to discuss that. It's really, I took an oath on the Constitution, the Florida Constitution, so I have a duty to uphold that, which means I really got to vet that language. And there was a lot of concern from the commissioners about whether they've engaged the public enough. We might show up Tuesday and everyone is okay with it, and then, that would tell us a lot more about the public. But moving forward, without giving the public an opportunity to weigh in, I think everyone felt really uncomfortable with that. So we did get to hear it at the last BCC. It will come back this time as a public hearing. So there will be an up or down vote.
Mm-hmm. And I really like that you said there are certain tools legally in our toolbox already that could be utilized in addition, or is this filling a gap?
Well, that was my question, and I didn't really get a super clear answer. There are many, many tools out there legally to prevent chaos in public settings and
like trespassing.
And destruction in private. That's a private setting, right? So if somebody steps onto private land, that's already a trespass. If you are creating a riot, that's clearly illegal. If there's destruction of property, that's vandal. There are many, many, many laws, ordinances that are in place, and my fear is that the more you add prohibitions, the better chance you have of being in a position where those may be applied disproportionately, or they may be interpreted in a way that is unfair to a certain group. And then I think it muddies the waters as far as people who really just want to exercise their right to free speech and their right to assemble. Because if they're fearful, we already have a new state set of prohibitions in place that criminalize protests to a very heightened extent. If they're already concerned about that and then they're not sure where they're supposed to stand, I can see it being a chilling effect on free speech. And I think for anybody that really values their Constitution, understands the power of free speech, we have to be really careful about how we take those rights. And we have to discuss who it's affecting and why those were ever contemplated. Why did we have that right to free speech and assembly? Well, it's because we didn't want someone else telling us what to do from across the pond. We wanted the ability to redress our government, which I love. Every 2 weeks, people get up and tell us we're idiots. It's beautiful. That's your First Amendment. You can do it. And I think it's something we have to take very, very seriously.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing that's coming up that's a little spicy, I don't know if this is going to be the last time, I really hope so, but the retail pet store ban.
Yeah, this is, I'm not going to make any secret about it. Everybody knows where I stand on this. I think we have an obligation to protect our public and the unsuspecting victims, which are the animals and the humans that get sick and that are victimized by financial fraud. We need to just in the Orange County, we need to say no more retail pet sales. The latest iteration includes rabbits.
My rabbit people
We got the
out
rabbits in.
Put your ears in the air.
We were able to, through the last work session, get the language right. We listened to, hundreds of people's emails and voicemails and people who came
really
and shared their experiences. There's just a couple factual things that are the determining factor for me. One of them is that we know for a fact that Puppy Mills, not necessarily in Orange County, but Puppy Mills nonetheless, ship their puppies to Orange County to be sold in a retail setting. We know that they're sick. They have been investigated by the state. There's still an ongoing investigation into one of the retailers for selling sick puppies and predatory lending. We know that they will sell those puppies for thousands and thousands of dollars, and they're sick, and then when they die, you have a broken heart and you owe a lot of money. And so that is, to me, it's preying on the most vulnerable, right? The people who are really trying to do the right thing by their new fur baby, and the people who are, I should say the most vulnerable is the animals, and then the people who are really trying to do the right thing. And I think, there's obviously a public education component to this, as far as understanding what the difference is between a retail pet store and a retail pet supplier. There's no other businesses involved in this. The only businesses involved are the ones that are putting pets in storefronts and selling them straight out the front, and then shipping, they're getting the shipments in the back. And so when you look at the stores that do grooming and that do pet supplies, that do training, this has nothing to do with them. And what I really hope is that the retailers that are opposing this just pivot and switch the model, so that we can not be the end supplier of the puppy mill puppies. The stories that we've heard have been overwhelming about the condition of some of these puppies when they come in, and what they bring into a home. Parvo is deadly. We talk about an obligation to the public. It's your health also. So there's, to me, a very clear answer to this. I know that all sides need to be heard and weighed, but other municipalities and counties have done it. Whole states have done it. And it's really the way to make sure that we're not participating in a criminal enterprise.
And quite frankly, to the consumers as well, I would love for people to feel like rescuing is really the best thing for them. And I know that there are responsible breeders out there that are doing the right thing, and that you can, if you want to buy your dog.
We've heard from them. They're, the responsible breeders, interestingly, because we weren't sure how, this was going to be received by people that are in that business. And it's a business. Yeah. If you're a responsible breeder, they're very concerned for the health and well-being of their breed. And one of the effects of a puppy mill type breeding operation is that it will damage the overall genetic, entity that is a type of pet that they love. Yeah. So they're concerned about that, and they believe that if it can be done the right way, it should be done the right way. So I've had really great conversations with trainers, vets, and responsible breeders. It wasn't the way I went. I was more interested in finding a pound puppy, but the world is made up of lots of different good people that come and yes. have different ideas for things. And to me, that's a very separate issue than the retail pet outlet, where you're seeing it's volume selling, which volume selling requires volume puppy making, which requires really horrible conditions for pets.
But on a separate note about the rescuing piece, if you are interested in getting a dog, there's over 700 animals, a dog, cat, or rabbit. There's over 700 animals under the shelter, Orange County Animal Services, right now that you can look up. We'll drop the link in the comments. There's a very long last call list this week, and we'll be making
really
posts about it.
Time for the people that work there. I just want to say something. I think it's really hard, because I think a lot of us feel really, really strongly about this. We feel very passionately. The people that chose to go into working in animal services and in places like Orange County, they didn't do it for the cash. They didn't do it for the fame. They didn't do it for the power. They did it because they love the animals, and they wanted to do something. They wanted a career that allowed them to do something good. And I think we've got to be very careful about who we paint as the enemy. Yeah. And I think we need to make sure that when we are vocal, that we're aiming it in the right direction, because that power and that energy can be used to really make change. Clearly, making sure that we're building the new facility is my role. Your role can be supporting that, showing up and saying, hey, we need to fund this, and I'm going to ask for that. Your role can be to help get fosters for these animals. Your role can be donating money, because I know that that's not an easy thing to put your time or your energy into an advocacy campaign. Your role can be helping with the communication part of this. You know, do you have a neighborhood group that needs to hear about what's going on and how many dogs need fosters? There are so many ways that we can plug in that don't require, you know, all of you, but whatever your expertise or whatever your level of interest is, and don't require it getting to the point of aggression or making people feel somehow like what they're doing at Animal Services isn't of value. What would we do without them?
Yeah.
You know, what is your plan, right? Like, so I hear from people that have some criticism, like, well, give me plan B. Because these are people that dedicate their lives to that, and it's not easy. They're working in that environment.
Oh yeah, if you've never toured or volunteered at the shelter, please go and just ask your questions, because they're very open and receptive to feedback.
Completely transparent. We've got all the data you would want. They sent us everything. So that's the other part of that sort of myth busting, is that I want to make sure you know we're asking the same questions. We have the same worries, and we are advocating for every change we can make to save as many pets as we can save. Well, I should say animals, because really they've been rejected. They're not pets. They've been rejected by somebody.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to understand that needs to happen, and your role in that is critical.
Yeah. Yeah, there's places in like Europe that I've seen just stray dogs by the hundreds in the community running around, and there's no animal control, and there's lots of problems of kids getting bit.
Well, and that's the health component too, right? Because then you don't have a widely vaccinated pet population, and I mean there's just
so many risks.
There's just a lot that goes into, you know, making sure that as part of the county services that we're taking care of our residents, the animals, and trying to communicate all of the parts of that.
So you also have a conversation coming up about Brightline.
Brightline is a high-speed private train system. They've already got their first part of track down in South Florida. High-speed train is coming to Orlando from South Florida within the next year and a half, and then they want to make the turn and head over to Tampa. They're right now still in discussions with CFX, because that is the authority that they go through. We will be getting some information on Tuesday about their route options and the way their budget looks and what the next steps are. I've been in communications with them about my concerns for the people in Hunters Creek, and the people in Hunters Creek have been really clear with them also. There's a lot of dialogue there, and we're really hoping that it can be productive going forward, because a lot of the decisions are still to be made about how that's going to look. So I want to make sure that I keep you all up to date. I'm really excited about having transportation options and getting people off of I-4 and getting people off of the 417 and off the 408. And high-speed rail really does make us a different type of destination, and it's a huge also economic driver. There's really great opportunities for a different kind of economy when you look at bringing in that type of transit. And, you know, we would be the first in the country to have that. So I think it's a very exciting time to be involved, but we also need to make sure that we're expressing the concerns or, you know, I think worries of our residents.
Yeah.
If you have any thoughts about that, please reach out to me. We can talk about what I know so far. I am not an appointee to the CFX board, but I do get updates from staff, and I also get updates from Brightline themselves. But it is a private entity, and they've been really clear about their goals to get to Orlando and then get over to Tampa.
And then it's really up to, you know, the county to figure out how to make multimodal transportation spread.
It's going to give us opportunities that we hadn't had. And that's the part that I'm the most excited about. I understand that Brightline is private, and that, you know, once we're done in sort of the process of the right-of-ways and where they're coming through county property, it's not our business. It's a little bit like negotiating with Delta or something, if you can think of that. What I'm really excited about is, because of the infrastructure they're bringing, and because of the discussion about the way transportation should spoke off of wherever they're coming in, I think there's going to be the best opportunity we've had ever in Orange County to get real mass transit that doesn't look like something on a road, something that isn't, you know, continuing to kill our planet. So I think and it's going to be better for workers, for visitors for all of us that have to commute. I cannot wait to get to work any other way than a car.
Yeah, and there's so many, over 70 million tourists that come here, and if we can get them off the roads as much as possible,
and it's not going to, not everybody's going to get off the road, but if you have an option, how great is that? And I know that Floridians love choices, so we're going to try to, we're really going to try to push for any potential opportunity that Brightline brings with them for that multimodal option, or the multiple ways that we can utilize that to get people around Central Florida.
And then the last thing that's coming up for a discussion is the transportation tax, and I think there's also a conversation about school impact fees as well. So
the impact fees are the way that the structure is really set up so that when there's new development, the community that's already here isn't doing the heavy lift for the things that are needed for the new development. So basically, every time that there's a development, once that structure is done, before a certificate of occupancy is given, there's a fee that's paid. And those fees go to our roads, they go to our schools, they go to our fire and our police, they go to the most fundamental things that we need as a community to live a healthy, safe life. And of course, in their infinite wisdom, in Tallahassee, they capped our ability to adjust those impact fees. Yes.
That was a good one.
Yes. To adjust those impact fees, which means that they are expecting you, the current resident, to foot the bill. Or they're expecting us to make really difficult decisions like, I don't know, do we need another police officer in this neighborhood?
Dip into other funds for other things.
Oh, you know what? We can get rid of all the people that work in public works, because we're going to keep No, it's not going to happen. There's going to be a way for us to get to it, and I think so. It's going to be on the agenda Tuesday to talk about the restructuring based on this bill that was passed. The legislation that came through is, it's absurd to think that that a local government doesn't have control over how to make sure that we're paving our roads and paying for our first responders. But we're going to continue to fight that fight at the next election cycle. I would say anybody that you're going to vote, if you're going to vote for somebody, you would ask them, how do you feel about local preemption? How do you feel about making sure that infrastructure is provided for? How do you feel about, home rule, autonomy of local communities to make their own decisions? Because if they feel like taking it away from you is a good idea, I would recommend rethinking that as your candidate.
Awesome. Well, I just brought up the transportation tax too because of the multimodal transportation opportunities, and I think
separate issue. Okay, so that's a separate. So impact fees, different, right? Side. So that's development. That's when a building gets done, a house gets done, something gets done. The impact fee is paid then. What Lee is mentioning is another really interesting thing that's coming back up. It was an initiative by the mayor and his administration prior to my election. 2019, they started talking about a sales tax initiative that would be specifically for really updating the transportation needs that we have. We just have lagging needs. There's some infrastructure that needs retooling, in addition to really what I think is a big motivation for people to get that mass transit and to increase the frequency of our current systems of transit, and to provide some relief to, I think, people that have to spend all day waiting for their bus route to come around.
Yeah.
So what basically the mayor expressed was that when we went into the pandemic hold, the idea of something that increases sales tax really didn't feel like the right time, because we would be paying for that as residents. The brunt of that comes to whoever's buying things. It's a sales tax. Yeah. The idea is that when our visitors go back up, when we are really at full, tourist capacity, if you will, that we can revisit it, because then the brunt of it goes to the visitors as far as what that sales tax, the real chunk of revenue comes from people that are coming in and spending money here. And anyone that's traveled knows that those sales tax, they really do fluctuate from area to area. And in Florida, we really don't have the same sort of stable revenue base that a lot of states do, because we don't have a state income tax. So the ways that we make up for that are with, sales tax and some other, approaches. And I think understanding that this one in particular would largely be paid for by our visitors, but the benefits would be reaped by the residents, is something that I think is very motivating, and I think we got to continue to talk about the ideas that people foresee if that goes forward, or if they even think it's something that's worth doing and worth supporting. So we'll continue to have that talk as we move forward.
Awesome. Well, in closing, Ernest, do we have any other questions?
You don't have any questions, but you have a few comments. Well, 2 comments from the same person. Christopher Severin says, "You made a good case for Horizon West, and please continue a good relationship with WG," which I'm guessing is Winter Garden. "It has been lacking in the past."
I absolutely agree. Horizon West, folks, I just want you to know, I think sometimes when I'm discussing things with planning, it sounds like I'm trying to squash development in Horizon West. That's not the case. I'm trying to make sure you're getting what you were promised. There were a lot of things that were put into this plan. It's called a master plan for Horizon West. And my fear is that every 2 weeks there are things that come through, waivers and variations in away from that original plan. And so I try really, really hard to scrutinize those and make sure that if something was told to residents as something that was coming, that it's coming, or that we don't give it away in little chunks every 2 weeks. Sometimes it's hard to see those globally. So it's really been an important thing for me to notice whenever I see an application asking for a change from, say, commercial to residential. That doesn't sound like a big deal. You think, oh, well, it's a 6-unit difference. There's no land difference. Why would this be an issue? But then when you look at it over at the master plan, you realize because that was intended to be the place where you're going to walk and get your groceries, or if they're moving some other, entity in replacing it with, townhomes. And then I look at the master plan and I think, wait, that's not right. That's where your park was supposed to go. So you could ride your bike there. Yeah. So those are the things I'm really trying to scrutinize and make sure that we don't give up the opportunities to get exactly what that plan was conceptualized for. Because, I think on paper it looked really good, but I think it chunks and chips at a time, it can be eroded. And I think, without a good transit plan in conjunction with the development plan, then it just sort of leaves you stranded. So those things were all, big goals, and making sure that we keep a very laser focus on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, everyone, it is Friday. It is past 5 o'clock, and it is time to relax.
That's right.
Go get your margaritas.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Thank you all. Bye.